Hello and welcome to the M42 Adventures podcast. I am your host, Rick Trimmer. Today we got a cool one. His name is Dell Timpson, and he is the owner-operator of Simplified Horsemanship and Blue Sage Adventures. He does everything with horses, everything you can imagine. Raising, breeding, training, riders and the horses. I mean, he's just all things horses. He's been doing it for 30 years. Absolute inspiration if you want to get into anything. You know, what I love about Dell is he took a chance and he's going to go out there and he went out there and he started a business doing what he loves. I envy people like that. A lot of people talk the talk and, you know, want to do something that they love, but they never do it. They get stuck in a rut trying to pay the bills. And he actually took the chance, and every day he gets to wake up and do something he loves, which is work with people and horses. And I was actually really excited for this. My son wants a horse. We've looked at getting into it, and he explains a lot of that. So if you've ever wanted to get into horses, learn about horses, the benefits of horses, this is the conversation for you. And we're going to jump right into this one. So stay tuned. So I am here with Dell Timpson. Thanks for coming in today, Dell. You drove out you live in Hilldale. So I'm always confused. You have Hilldale and you have Colorado City. Which is which? One's on the U.S., or not U.S., the Arizona border.
Hilldale is in Utah.
Okay, Hilldale's in Utah.
Yeah.
I was actually out. I drove to Cane Beds, not last weekend, the weekend before. And there was, right before you get out to the sand dune, you know, like into the mountains, there's a place there with tons of horses. Have you seen that place out there?
Yeah.
There's like 50 or 60 horses out there. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, they're all Pasafinos.
Okay.
And a friend of mine I went to school with started that herd of Pasafinos there in Colorado City.
Okay.
And he sold some to Ross LeBaron, who owns that property, or he used to. I think it's in the still family, LeBaron family. But yeah, they've just been unmaintained for
Are they
almost 20 years, and they've accumulated quite a herd because they don't.
Are they just pets? Do they ride them? Do they?
No,
they sell them.
Just a wild herd that just keeps growing.
It's nuts. There was like, I mean, how many is that? There's like 40 or 50, which you don't see. You know,
I'd say close to 50.
You don't see a lot of that. You know, when you're driving around, you see tons of cows because they're raised for beef.
Right.
But I was driving along. It's just beautiful to see that many horses. You know, we pulled over. My kids were looking at them, you know, and I'm like, that's just a cool sight. Horses, you know, so Dell, you know, the reason I brought you on here today, you own Blue Sage Adventures, right? And I love that you did adventures. Obviously, you can see with our name and our title, you know, we've got M42 Adventures. I went on your website this morning, and I loved how you said it's not just a trail ride, it's an adventure. And that's, you know, I think a lot of people when they get into, or when they think about horse riding, most people don't own horses, right? This day and age. I'm sure most of your friends do.
Yeah.
But the world overall, they just don't, you know, they're expensive. They're hard to keep. There's not enough space. And so most people's experience with a horse is, you know, going to a place, you know, and you see a trail ride, you hop on, they're already saddled, they're already ready to go. You hop on for 20 minutes, you do a quick loop, hop off, you know, and it's you know, that's the style. And from looking at your website, you know, we haven't spent a lot of time together. You came up and did our event in New Harmony a month ago or so. But from what I get from you, it's more about the adventure. It's more about the education. I saw on your website where it says, we'll take you to whatever level you want to go to. You know, it can be, I'm sure it could be a loop if that's what you're comfortable with, but we can go beyond that. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So what got you into this? You know, were you born and raised into horses?
No, my dad grew up on a farm in Idaho, but when he raised his family, he got totally away from any animals or anything. But I've always been obsessed with horses as long as I can remember.
Okay.
But we grew up in a small enough community. I had friends that had horses. They would actually ride them to school a lot. And so for recess, I would trade marbles or candy or whatever I could to ride a horse.
Was this in Hilldale or was this up in
Colorado
Idaho?
City.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
My dad was actually in here yesterday. His name's Kendall. He's the one who owns the ranch where you came up to in New Harmony.
Oh, okay.
And he was telling me, we were talking about some of the stuff he's done in his life and his adventures, and he was telling me about how at 10 years old he had a horse, and he'd go down and jump on it. He says, I was too lazy to put a saddle on it, just rode it bareback, had a BB gun. He'd go out hunting rabbits, and that's just an unbelievable thing to my generation. I have a 9-year-old that's going to be 10 here in a couple months. I would never let him take a horse and just go riding, and that's the good old days,
Yeah.
There's a beautiful thing in that where, kids riding horse. I mean, elementary, that's about the same age, right?
Yeah.
8 or 9, and they'd ride a horse to school.
Yeah.
And just tie it up.
Yeah. Yeah, there was trees out there, and they just tie it to a tree.
See, I love that. So you didn't actually come from a family who had a bunch of horses. You just kind of were drawn to them. And so when did you start working with horses? When did you get your first horse?
So I didn't have a horse till I was 16. I actually was able to spend a year with my grandparents. I was a wild child, so Dad was looking for a place to send me to where it may resonate a little better. So I was able to live with my grandparents because they did have animals. They didn't have a horse, but they had cows and sheep. They'd have milk cows and chickens and everything. So anyway, my brother had a horse, and he told me that he would give that horse to me while I was there. So anyway,
So that's
had a ton of fun.
So that's how it came to be. That was your first horse, and it was obviously broke. I mean, good to ride.
Yeah, he was a young horse, half Morgan, half Arabian, real high spirited. But
And that's how you got in. You were hooked ever since.
well, when I was 10 years old, I spent a couple of days. Our family went up to a ranch up above Bryce Canyon,
Okay.
and I was able to ride a Shetland pony without a saddle.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was able to go up the mountain and just spend couple hours just riding by myself, and from that day on I knew this is what I wanted to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So 16, you get a horse. You how did it? Is Blue Sage a full-time job, or is it kind of a side passion?
Full time.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have two sides to our company. One is my training. We do equine therapy, and that's called Simplified Horsemanship, and that's my personal deal.
Okay.
And so the Blue Sage is more about the
Tours and
and then my two boys work with me, and we also do riding lessons, roping lessons. My boys do team roping. They compete in that event. So
what's that? Team roping is, for people who are listening that don't know, that's where the cow comes out, the calf. The steer.
It's a steer, yeah.
And they lasso the horns and have to get the back 2 feet or 1 foot.
Yeah, so there's a roping box on each side of the chute where they let the cow out. The one on the left comes out and ropes the horns or the head. Dallies goes left. The one on the right comes in and ropes the back legs.
Okay, and do you have to get both legs?
Well, if you only get one leg, they add 5 seconds to your time.
Okay.
And so it's real important
to get both, because every second counts.
Yeah, and so if you miss your first one, you're done. But if you rope your first one, you get a second one, and then the third one.
Okay.
So whoever ropes 3 in the shortest amount of time wins.
Okay. I love watching it. I have a friend who does it. I'm not going to remember his name. More of an acquaintance, but anyway, I don't remember his name. But I love watching that kind of stuff and that talent, to rope the back legs of a steer that's running down. The horns seem easier, it's on top of the head. It's a little more easier looking to me.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
But to get that the back legs in between a run, a step,
your timing has to be perfect.
Unbelievable.
It's very difficult because you get some slow cows, medium cows, fast cows, and so it's really tough.
Yeah.
Being a header, that takes a lot of practice.
Yeah. So, okay, so Simplified Horsemanship, that's your business.
Yeah.
And so when did you start that? How long ago? So 16, you got your first horse. How did it progress? Like, how did you, because you were talking to me before the podcast started, you were doing cabinets, you did some other stuff.
Yeah.
When did you decide to start horses as a business? And then how did it become full time? I'm sure there was a transition, or did you just leap?
Yeah, there was a transition. I had gotten away from horses pretty much after I moved back home and finished high school, started as a job. I actually started painting houses for a fellow there in Colorado City, down here in St. George, and we did that for less than a year, and I ended up buying his business from him, me and my brother. So I kind of got away from horses for a few years, other than a friend of mine that had that ranch up above Bryce Canyon. I'd go ride with him a couple of times a year. And then I was down here painting for a few years, and this friend offered me a partnership in starting colts. So I sold the paint business to my brother and started training full time.
So starting colts, that means the colt's born and you're training it, breaking it?
We'd have clients that would bring us 2-year-olds, 2 or 3-year-olds, and we'd start them under saddle. And typically, we'd ride them for a month or two, depending on how wild they were.
Okay.
Some of them would train quite easy, and in 30 days, the owners would be able to take them from there and keep them going. But some of them were a little tougher, and it'd take a couple of months.
You see you see the TV shows, people, working with them, and it terrifies me, But I guess there's this process, I'm sure, that you don't just hop on them.
Yeah, my friend was a really good bronc rider, and he didn't mind them bucking. He would saddle them up and move them around for a bit, and if they didn't do something crazy like tip over backwards or do a somersault or something, he'd get on them and let them buck and just ride off.
Ride them. Wow, that's crazy.
And I found out in a hurry I didn't want to be a bronc rider. I naturally started doing groundwork and, making sure they're a little more relaxed and comfortable. So,
yeah, I saw you working with the horses up at our event, and you have a lot more different approach than anybody. Like I said, I've been around horses, not a ton, but a little bit, and you have a lot different approach than what I've been taught, or seen. A lot of people are very, they try to show dominance, or they try to, intimidate the horse. And with you, it was kind of like, hey, we got to build trust. We got to kind of understand. And you were talking about, they have different personalities. They're, it's, and I think that's a good way to look at it, where, anything in life, if you just go in and try to just dominate it, you might win it over, but you're not going to earn its respect, and trust back.
They won't trust you or respect you if you don't make sure they're really comfortable.
Yeah. So I like to see some of the techniques you were using up there to teach people about, how to, and that's with our events. And I think you are the perfect person for it, because I didn't want to do where they come up and they just hop on a horse and ride it around in a circle. I want them to, most of our guests, including me, are going to have a little bit of time with the horse maybe, but not much. But I wanted to understand, the whole process, getting it out of the trailer, brushing it, all these different types of things that, that go with, working with a horse. And that's the beauty of it to me. So I really like the way you did that, when you stepped out of from the moment you unloaded your horses, it was about education and, understanding it. And then we got into the, quote unquote fun part where it's, where you're riding and actually going up into the hills. But at the same time, it's very, very important to learn all the other stuff in the beginning too, right?
Yeah. Early on in my career with riding, then I had a horseman tell me, It takes a year to a year and a half to train a good horse, and it takes 20 years to train a horseman. And I'm like, it ain't going to take me 20 years.
Yeah.
And I found out it took me more.
Yeah.
I'm naturally a high energy competitive person, and with more, I don't know, lethargic kind of horse that's more secure, I get along with really well naturally. But I really had to develop the patience to deal with a more reactive horse, and so I had to hurry up and slow down.
Yeah.
And take it as an individual, not so many trainers get in trouble because they have a regimented program. And I've found out every horse is different. You've got to tune into the individual. Every day's different.
Just like a child.
Yeah. I mean, they have aches and pains that they can't tell us about, and we've got to learn to read a horse, the way it moves and everything, to see, how it's getting along that particular day. So that's what I love about it, is there's no monotony involved.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I have 3 little boys, and my oldest and my middle child are completely different, completely different personalities, the way I, talk to them, raise them, it's just different. I interact with them differently because they need different things. I can raise my voice to one and he'll cry. I raise my voice to the other and he laughs, and so I can only imagine that horses are the same way, different personalities. And so I think, like you said, that's wise to have, when you get regimented, when you have that this works for everything, it doesn't, a one rule, for them all, I can see that wouldn't work. It's like you need to be able to adapt and change when you get this horse that doesn't like, my dad, he had horses. He has mules now. He switched over to mules, which we'll talk about. But when he had horses, I remember he had one that hated water.
Yeah.
Naturally, it just didn't like water. And it's like some horses will just walk right through it, and some horses are terrified of it. And to have the same training process for each horse wouldn't work,
Right.
And so that's where, that's where I'm always amazed, because I'm sure you could take a horse that's afraid of water and in a certain amount of time get it to go through a stream, and how do you do stuff like that? How do you take a horse that doesn't like being loaded into a horse trailer, or doesn't, and how do you take those steps?
Well, that's why I call my program Simplified Horsemanship, is because you got to get creative and break it down. Like, before I'd ever ask a horse to walk through water, I would ask it to walk through a narrow place, and then a log, and then maybe a tarp, and break it down as much as possible. So by the time I got it to what I actually wanted it to, whether it was to load in a trailer or walk through water, break it down to these simpler things like walking over a log and a tarp and stuff. And so by the time you get it there, it's going to be trusting you a lot more, to where it wouldn't take as much time, rather than just push it into something that's your goal. Break it down.
Do you ever, so is there a bond, like if you're on a horse, if you have a horse and somebody else has a horse, is there, because to me, the layman person, a horse is a horse, whether I get on it or you get on it, but is there a bond that you create with a horse, just kind of almost like a dog or something, to where it's loyal to you? Do you ever feel that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. They're very sensitive. They feel your energy.
They know when you're nervous.
Emotion.
They know when you're,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So
that's what's so amazing. That's what I love.
Yeah. Just seeing how they, so simplified horsemanship, are you working with the horses mostly, or are you working with the riders mostly, or both?
Both.
Okay.
It's very important to work with both.
So do you bring people out with their horses, or do you bring people to your horses, or probably both?
We do everything, yeah. Some trainers don't want the owners around until they feel like their horse is trained. I don't like that. I want the people to be there as much as possible. And that is the most difficult thing because in today's world, everybody's busy. But
They want to drop their horse off and have you solve the problem.
when I take on a horse, I say, okay, you have got to at least spend 3 to 4 times with me before you take it home. I want you to make sure you understand how to connect with your horse.
Okay. So when did you start Simplified Horsemanship? How long have you been doing that?
About 20 years now.
20 years.
Yeah.
You've been doing, wow. You went right into that full time. I mean, you jumped into that or did you kind of have to have it on the side?
Gradually worked into it.
Yeah. Build your clientele.
I got more knowledge on really how to train a horse efficiently. Yeah.
So
it took a lot of time.
Yeah. So Blue Sage, that's more the tours and the taking people out for rides, Dutch oven dinners you do, I saw, tours like that. And then Simplified is working with the people, with the horses, trying to develop just, I think that one of the things with a lot of people, and we saw this at my event where, I've even been around horses, but they're intimidating. They're very big. I grew up not on horses. I grew up on dirt bikes. But my dad had horses, and I would always rather ride a dirt bike. I loved horses, and I admired them, but I was scared. And my dad says, I'm way more scared of your dirt bike than the horse. And I wasn't because I felt like I was in control of that. So that's one thing that we're hoping to alleviate, by bringing these people to these events that we're having is, some people, you saw, we had 33 people there. And I think about half of them rode. The other half wanted to maybe pet it, brush it, but they weren't ready to step onto the horse yet. How does a person overcome that? I mean, you almost have to spend time with that person, letting them understand what the horse is. And like you said, that's what you're doing in the beginning with the class that we had at our event.
Yeah, like I do an equine therapy class every week, and some of the clients want to get right into riding, and others are more timid, and like you say, petting them is enough. So you got to tune into the individual to see what they're ready for, because if you push them too quick, too fast, just like a horse, they check out.
Yeah, intimidates them, and you have problems. I'm sure too with a horse, if they're not comfortable, then they're gonna do something wrong. You were talking a lot about how to. Even once we got my boys rode, all 3 of my boys, my 3-year-old just didn't want to get off, Locke, he was just in heaven up there. But you talked a lot about, how to control them, with the reins. And, like I said, I grew up around horses a little bit, but man, I learned so much in those couple hours that was just, it's really, I love seeing, I think a lot of people just jump on a horse and just to figure you kick it, you crank its reins,
pull it to stop.
Yeah. And there's, I liked how you were saying, like loosen up on the reins. These are, these aren't, you can let go when it's doing what you want. You can release it and let it just be, and then when you need it to turn. You were talking about spurs. And you said most people use spurs wrong.
Yes.
What is that? What was that?
So if you use a spur to jab your horse, that is the exact opposite of getting it to respond, because taking it, for instance, if a lion attacked a horse and put its claws into it, it would go into pressure. So if you jab a horse, they naturally go into that pressure. They don't move away from it naturally if you don't break it down and use that spur to roll and tickle it. Because when you tickle a horse, I mean, think about it. They can feel a fly on them and they shake it off.
Yeah.
So if you tickle them, then they move away from pressure, and that's what you want. You don't want to jab them to hurt them, because they'll instinctively go into that pressure.
Fight or flight.
And you can really hurt a horse by doing that, because their instinct is to go into that pressure. And so if you're hitting them hard, you can really hurt one.
Yeah, see, and that's the kind of stuff that's just amazing to me, the details. There's so many details.
They're simple-minded enough. It's not the pressure they resonate with. It's the release of pressure. So if you break that down and build it from a suggestion to an ask, before you use your rowel, just use your calf of your leg to get them to move. Instead of start with a jab like most cowboys do, they treat their horse like a slave. Do this right now or I'll kick your ass.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
anyway, I've learned from the top clinicians in the country that have really studied how horses think. And so if you use their own language to get their respect and trust, it is so simple.
You know, one of the things that I've always admired is when you go, I don't know if they still do it, but when you used to go to SeaWorld as a kid down in San Diego, and they had the big killer whales, and they're doing flips and doing all these tricks, you know, and you see the trainers out there with them, and everything with a killer whale is a reward. You can't spank a killer whale. You can't, you know, poke a killer whale, you know, and so I always admired that, you know, even when I have kids, it's like you can train this, you know, thousands of pound animal all from rewards. You don't have to beat them. You know, you don't have to, you know, and that's always been a good lesson for me where, like you're saying with the horse, you know, you see a lot of people try to, and that's what I've seen kind of growing up was, you know, I know my dad's against it. He's had some hunters out where they'll mistreat a horse and he'll, you know, tell them to walk back to the truck. You know, he's very adamant about you don't mistreat the horse. But you see these hunters come out, you know, on a trip, you know, never really ridden a horse. They hop on, they just want to, you know, they think they're big, tough guys and they want to just be in charge. And you don't have to do that. That's not necessary to get this large animal to do what you want to do. You can do it through love and respect. You don't have to do it through, you know, threats and beating it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's all. I've always admired that. You kind of touched on, I have a quote in here. You know, we were talking about, so these events that we're having at our, you know, place with you, you know, one of the guys that was there, he actually said it was his favorite part. You know, he says, I loved it. The horses were just the best part for him. He hadn't had a lot of experience. And, you know, when he went up and rode up into the hills, it was just, it changes you. You know, it can either, you know, some people may not like it, and that's fine. That's why we have all these different things in life. And some people have horse businesses and some have UTV businesses. You know, it's beautiful, the beauty of life. But this person, he loved it. And he was talking to me. He actually talked to me and Ricky about how it made him feel when he got home. You know, and I think that's an aspect of being around horses that we don't think about. We think, you know, for me, a lot of times it's, I'm going to get on this horse and ride it to the top of the hill to go get this elk, you know, with my dad, or I'm going to ride it around, you know, in this pasture to ride the horse. But we don't understand what it's doing to us internally, you know, days later, weeks later. And I have this stat that says, being around horses can have physical and emotional rewards. For example, working with horses can reduce heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormones and increase endorphins. It can also lead to increased confidence, patience, and self-esteem. Horses can help people with conditions like motor disabilities, PTSD, and autism, and on the autism spectrum disorder. That's amazing. You know, that is, you know, you hear people say, why should I come to your events? Why should I come, you know, to your trail rides, you know, to your adventures? And it's like, it's for the experience that day, but you don't know what this is going to do for you long term, right? And that's what I think the beauty of horses for me. Just watching my boys, and I appreciate you coming up, spending the day there. It was wonderful. It's just you have to just wake up and love your job. You know, you have to, and that's again the reason I've started M42 Adventures, because I want to be like you, Dell. You know, I want to wake up and do something that not only, you know, it's selfish, right? Everybody says, you know, I'm sure you feel that every day where you think, I'm the lucky one in this.
Yeah.
I get to wake up and be around these beautiful animals and not painting a house. And that's the beauty of what we're doing, you know. And so can you talk a little bit more about that? It sounds like that's really what you're about, is this, you know, this benefit that is bigger than just sitting on a horse, and it goes into your soul, you know. It changes you, right?
Well, it's absolutely what I feel keeps me connected to the universe, is working with horses, and especially working with people that
I like
maybe
that.
have issues, because it really brings them back to reality. It's just such a beautiful thing.
It's got to be, I'm sure in 20, 30 years of doing this, I'm sure you've just seen, I'm a few months into it, and we're excited to be working with you and doing these. And I hope it's a long, prosperous relationship. But you've had to just seen miraculous things in your time of troubled teens, I'm sure with people that are on drugs that come out. You see a lot of these rehabilitation centers for youths or drug addicts or alcoholism, and they are all getting into more work with horses. And there's a reason for that, right? It's cures you. It can cure you. It's actually can be medicine.
Oh yeah, we've like on our trail rides, we've had guests tell us it's quite common to hear this is the highlight of our trip.
Hey guys, let's step away from the conversation real quick, and I wanted to talk to you about a few things that M42 Adventures is offering this year. First, I'd like to talk about our retreats experiences here in southern Utah. They will be on a 50-acre ranch, absolutely amazing property, and it's a place where you can come and learn from the experts in their fields, build friendships, and enhance your outdoor skills. We're going to have everything from fly fishing experiences, UTV experiences, horse riding, archery, survival experiences, hiking, outdoor cooking, firearms. It's absolutely amazing. We just had our last retreat a couple weeks ago. 33 people attended, and it was an absolute amazing event. If that sounds like something you'd want to come do, it's all inclusive, and I promise it will change you. So hopefully you can look into those dates. They are August 29th to September 1st and September 12th to September 15th. Look into that and see if those will work for you, and we'd love to see you out there. The other one is our Africa experiences. This fall, we have 2 Africa experiences coming up, August 5th to the 11th and August 11th to the 17th. We've actually sold, I think, 19 places to those events, so it is filling up. But if you'd like to come out, again, it's the men, women, children. I'm taking my wife and my 3 little boys, age 12, 9, and 3. So it's family friendly. It should be an absolutely amazing experience as well. It's not just hunting. You can come and do the photo safari, helicopter ride, or go to an orphanage. I'm actually very excited about this one. So if that's something you'd like to come out and check out, I will be the headliner August 11th to the 17th, and Ryan Mickler will be the headliner August 5th to the 11th, and we'll be spending time with you during that week and getting to know each other. So I would love to see you out there. Again, those are some of the things we have coming up. If that's anything you'd be interested in, we're also going to start offering corporate retreats, family group retreats here in southern Utah. If you'd like to come out and have one of these experiences with the horses, with the UTVs, with the firearms, with the archery, and bring your company, your family, or just a group, we can cater it to you as well. So that's something new that we are going to start offering. We've got a couple of those in the works for this summer with some companies that want to bring their employees out and actually partner with M42 and have their own retreats. So just a few of the things we're offering. Again, we're excited about all this. If you'll continue to listen to the podcast, follow us on social media, share, follow, we sincerely appreciate that. All right, let's get back to this conversation.
And some of these emotional kids that have come over to work with the horses, they literally break down and cry. They're just so touched, and I think they feel a lot of reconnection to the universe with how a horse responds to them. And so it's more like teaching them leadership skills to build self-confidence and just reconnect them to the earth and let them know, hey, life is worth living.
I think I think like you said, because we get that from dogs and some people with cats. I'm not a cat person, but there's something different about a horse. Just the size, the sheer size, thinking, this thing could kill me if it wanted to at any moment. And when you get on it and you ride with it, like you said, I like that you said that it connects you to the universe, because that's absolutely true. It's just therapy. I mean, to be on the back of a horse, show me a person that's not smiling when they're not on the back of a horse. We have hours and hours of videos from our event, a few weeks ago, and everybody's just grinning ear to ear. Everybody's just, it's a highlight. It's a beautiful thing, So I envy that that's something you get to do every day. You know, the other thing that I envy is, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. We talked about that before the podcast, you know, and so that's all I've ever known was starting my own businesses. And, you know, there's lots of people I guarantee who would love your life, and you did it, you know, and I respect that, you know, as you know, that you took those chances. Everybody will say, oh, you know, Dell got lucky, you know, he's lucky. I don't ever agree with that. You know, I'm sure there was very hard times where, you know, this or that happened, and the struggles. And I mean, we could go into a whole nother podcast, I'm sure, on how this came to be, you know, and how you started it and how it's grown. Like you said, it started out as a side hustle, and I'm sure it did, you know, to just jump into having the clientele and the knowledge of having, you know, this type of a business you don't get overnight. And so I'm sure you had to pay the bills and work every day and then go do this at nights or mornings or weekends, you know, and people don't see that kind of effort, you know. And so I think they see when you get to the end result and it's, you know, Dale gets to ride horses every day and be around horses, he's lucky. And it's like, that's not, I mean, am I right?
You're absolutely right. Yeah. When I was down here selling cabinets, I'd be down here at 6 o'clock in the morning and work till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I'd go ride till dark.
And it's what, an hour drive
down here in St. George that had a horse ranch, and so I'd ride for him for at least 3 hours every day. So I was putting in 11 hours plus traveling 2 hours each way or an hour each way. So.
Yeah, 2 hours. I mean, that's a long day, and you did that for
yeah, several years.
Yeah, and that's it. You know, people. What I hear a lot is, I told you a little bit about my story before we started this podcast. You know, we don't know each other too well. You know, I got your number from, I told you, the fire chief in Apple Valley, and you know, and then we met at the event, talked a little bit, but you didn't know my story. And I hear a lot of times, you know, people say, you're lucky, and I just kind of laugh, you know, and it's like, you weren't there when I was working 14-hour days for years, you know, to try to tip the scale into freedom, you know. And so I really admire not only, you know, what you're doing by helping people, working with animals, that's commendable in its own, but the fact that you created that, you know, that's why I was curious when we started talking was, you know, did your family own a horse ranch and you were born into it and you just, you know, but that wasn't the case. You had to go out there and kind of figure out how to get this started, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had a couple questions here that I was going to ask you. First of all, what I'd like to know, I want to get down to kind of the nitty gritty for people, including myself. My 12-year-old loves horses. He absolutely loves them. And we've talked about getting a horse. You know, I told you I have 40 acres out in Apple Valley. You know where my cabin is, right? Mm-hmm. Up on the hill there. And it's overwhelming. You know, it's just overwhelming. Not even the cost, which we'll talk about a little bit, but I mean, how many types of breeds of horses are there?
Hundreds.
Yeah. Hundreds.
Yeah.
So I didn't even think there was that many. That's even more overwhelming. So how do you, you know, how do you ever start? How does somebody who listening that says, I would love to get into, you know, I know there's a lot of places here in town even that have horse boarding. So you don't have to have property necessarily.
No.
Right? You can go get a stable somewhere and rent it. Do you know what those are? A couple $100 a month? I don't know.
Oh, it's a good average is $500 a month.
Okay, so $500 a month. That's for the spot to keep the horse.
And raw cost of feeding a horse is about $300. So
A month.
there's not a lot of money into it.
Okay, so $800 a month. You could have a place to keep your horse in a town. I mean, you don't need to have 20 acres to have a horse, and then to feed it. So how do you pick a horse to buy? Where do you even start? How would you start if you?
I would absolutely recommend somebody who works with horses like myself or somebody like your dad who's been around them his whole life, mm-hmm. because there's so much involved. You got to know a lot of things about a horse before you just rush in and buy one.
That's a good point, because I always tell people in everything I do in life, I get a mentor. Usually it's business, because that's kind of what I've done for the last while. But I tell people, read books, and watch YouTube and get mentors because it's cheat codes. You know, you have 30 years of knowledge with horses. I have 0. If I can come, and most people, that's what I've told, is most people want to help you. You know, most people who are out there that are decent people want to. I'm sure if I came to you and said, hey, I want to look at getting a horse, and you didn't really know me, and you'd have a 20-minute conversation on how to start me.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't just say, get out of here, you know, leave me alone. So I tell people, go ask, go talk to people. I have people who want to get into bow hunting. I'm a big bow hunter. And they're like, how do I start? And I'm like, go down to the archery store. Go find an archery store in your town or a neighboring city and talk to the guy who's been doing it for 20 or 30 years. And so that's great advice. So go find somebody, look it up. You can find them. You know, I was going to say the yellow pages, but those don't exist anymore.
All right.
Google it, right? So Google it, find somebody. And that's the other thing too, is come out to an event. You know, that's what I tell them. Come out to an event, come sign up with you and go on a trail ride. You know, we had 33 people at my event in New Harmony, and you're going to be there. You know, at our next event, you're going to be there, you know, and these people are going to be there for 3 or 4 days. And it's like, come out, spend a day with a horse and actually see if you enjoy it. You may not. You know, that's the other thing is, I actually tell people when they're looking at buying a car, one of the hacks that I've found, anytime I'm looking at buying a car, I go rent it first. You know, I wanted to buy a Jeep Gladiator, and I'm like, I don't know if I want one. I'm not going to go spend 50 grand. I went and rented one off Turo for a couple $100, drove it around for a few days, and I was like, yeah, I like this, or I don't. So it's like, go to an event where they have, go find a Blue Sage Adventures or an M42 Adventures. Sign up, come out, spend the time, and see if you enjoy being with that animal, and that's what calls you. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that's a pretty easy way to get your feet wet, right?
Yeah.
So basically, so if I really want to ask this though. So I have you here, I've got your undivided attention. How would you, if I wanted to get my boy a horse, how would I go about that? Do you sell horses? Is there?
Yeah, we do. We buy and sell horses.
You do? Okay.
Yeah,
so
it's part of our program. Yeah.
Okay. So that's awesome. So you're the guy to know then. I mean, if somebody wants to get a horse, and what species do you, or what breeds do you deal with, and why?
Well, for what I do, I really like the quarter horse because it was bred to work cows, which is a big part of what we do with our adventures. And the quarter horse is bred for strong hip to really get out there and catch a cow, and then for a big stop. And they're very agile. They can really read a cow. And so we use the quarter horse.
How did they get that name? Do you know it all?
Yeah, they brought it originally into the quarter mile.
Oh, okay.
For really fast speed. The
racehorse.
thoroughbred is more like bred to run a mile.
Okay.
But the quarter horse, they wanted a horse that could run a shorter race in a quicker amount of time.
Okay, so the quarter mile is the quarter horse.
The quarter horse is the fastest horse on record.
Okay.
And they've developed a horse with a big hip for really fast speed.
Okay.
And then a big stop.
Because when you came to my event, you brought several horse breeds. What did you bring?
No, the 3 were quarter horses. The 1 was crossbred. She looks like she's got Morgan, or she could be even part Mustang. She's got big feet and a head like a Mustang. So I'm not sure exactly what breed, but she's a crossbred mare. And so we do have a few horses that aren't quarter horses, but for the most part, we use quarter horses for what we do.
That's interesting, because I was there and there was a gentleman there he's been around horses a lot, and he thought you had to paint.
That paint is not the quarter horse.
That's the one of the 3. And then he thought you had I thought it was what's the like tan ones? What are those ones?
So the Palomino.
I thought it was a Palomino.
So there is a breed called the Palomino, but it's also a color, and she's that Palomino color, but she is a quarter horse.
See, great. Like, I don't even, so you can see that horse. You could have seen that. You'd know that horse if you just walking by. You'd know that it's a quarter horse.
Yeah.
Just from like, I
Yeah,
guess
just
it's
how their conformation
I guess it's
is,
like
how
me
they're
looking
built.
at a boxer dog or a Rottweiler. I mean, there's a distinct difference. You can see that.
Yeah.
So my property, I have those 40 acres out there, and there's some horses there on the property that somebody just kind of left. And there's a guy who comes and feeds them occasionally. I feed him quite a bit. I can't remember his name, but they're from like Spain. They're like one of those fancy trotting horses. Have you seen those? I can't remember the breed.
It's probably an Andalusian.
That
They're a
might be
Spanish horse that's similar size of a quarter horse.
Yeah, they look like a normal horse, but
they're-
when we spook them, they won't let you get close to them at all. But when we kind of spook them, they have a funny gait, kind of funny trot.
Yeah, some of them are bred, they call them gated. They're single foot or have different gaits, and I'm not real familiar with the gated breeds.
Yeah.
But I can tell a gated horse when I see them because they have a certain shuffle, how they walk and move.
See that? Yeah, that's crazy. So okay, so you got the horse. What's a good horse cost? I mean, like to get started. You know, I know my dad. He bought it was one of those horses. I think it was I don't know if it was for roping, but he bought a horse for like 15 or 16,000, and I was just like, holy cow, you know, it's 15, 20 years ago, and I'm like, okay, Dad, you know, but I mean, I'm sure it can get astronomical, some of the pricing, but what's like a good starter horse that's safe to go ride? What's kind of that price point?
A good average cost here in southern Utah
Yeah.
is around $5,000 to have a nice horse that would be safe to go out and do about anything you'd want to do.
Okay. And they last a long time. You were telling me, you know, what does a horse live? 20, 30 years?
Yeah, around 30 years.
30 years.
Mid to late 20s is,
Still rideable,
Yeah.
still usable.
yeah.
So, I mean, you can have a long relationship with this horse. When you buy them in the beginning, are they a couple years old? Do you want somebody that's broken them? Or?
Well, some people think, let's buy a young horse for my young person. Green on green is not very safe unless you have a really good supervisor.
Right, absolutely. I'm sure, because, you know, I was actually out riding horses with my dad one time, and I had a girl with me, and we were on 3 horses, a horse each, and she was behind me. She was behind me, and then my dad was in the front, I think, or she was in front of me actually. Anyway, a bee stung it. You know, just a random thing. It got stung by a bee, and it jumped and hopped a couple times, and she fell off. And, you know, hindsight, my dad says your feet should have been like this in the stirrup. You should have had a hold of this. You know, we don't know what we don't know. And so I can see that if you have an animal that you don't know exactly how it's going to react to water, or, you know, a rabbit running out of a bush. I fell off a horse one time. I was riding with my cousin, doubles, and a jackrabbit ran out of the bush, and the horse reared up, and I was on the front. I should have held on better because he's holding on to me, and I wasn't holding on, and I went over back. We went over off the horse, you know.
Well, that's one of the things that I learned early on when we trail rode. We ended up getting a couple of dogs to go with us, and they would stay out in front of us, and they would make sure the rabbits were gone before we came by.
Yeah,
so
that's
that's
smart.
another safety feature we learned for what our program.
Yeah, that's smart. I never would have thought of that. Yeah,
So-
just get the pheasants or the birds or the quail, whatever's going to hop out of a bush, get it out of the way.
Yeah, the other day we were riding along, and a horsefly came and landed on one of the horses that a lady was riding, and it kicked up its heels to get rid of the horsefly. It startled her, but it wasn't big enough to unseat her or anything. But you just never know. Some things just happen like that. So,
and like you said, that's where, you know, time and you know, time in the seat is invaluable, I'm sure, on all those types of things. You were telling me you actually what was your story about? You got crushed or something, or kicked?
Well, no. I was riding this young horse getting ready for a sale, and it was right before dark. And I cinched it up tight without walking her around to let her relax. I just jumped on her back, and she was cinch bound. It was just too tight for her.
The saddle.
The saddle was too tight. So I just stepped on her and nudged her to go forward. And she did the opposite.
What does cinch bound mean?
So there's
pinches
girth
them?
area where the saddle strap tightens to hold the saddle on the horse. Right behind the front legs. That's a very sensitive area. So you have to let your horse relax and walk it around for a minute.
That's what you're doing with us, where you,
especially with a younger horse.
I see. And that's what you're doing at our event, where you said, don't just crank it.
So sometimes they literally rear over backwards. That pressure is so tight to that horse, they'll flip over backwards. And luckily, she just backed up. And she backed underneath my canopy where the cubes were. She sat down on a bag of cubes, and then that startled her. Then she lunged forward. And
All while you're on her back.
yeah. And when she lunged forward, there was a nail sticking out of the soffit. And as she lunged forward, brought my head up there, and it caught the nail caught my eyelid.
Oh,
Luckily, it didn't rip
gosh.
my eye out, just ripped my eyelid.
God.
So
Yeah.
that was the worst thing that happened. But it's just a precaution that I had to learn. You just got to take the time to walk them around, let them relax before you tighten that saddle on tight enough to get on.
Yeah, I'd never.
So there's a lot to it.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, that's what you're doing, the simplified horsemanship, and with M42 Adventures, is we want to bring people into this world that we love, right? We want to bring people out and let them experience, and horses, I don't know, I don't know the statistic, but it seems like it's less common, as far as what you're doing with, especially with the, the cattle drives, the Dutch oven dinner, stuff like that. It's like, you just can't find that anymore. That's so rare. And who doesn't love that? That's the Wild West,
Yeah.
that's the dream. So, all right, I have some more questions here for you. Let's see. So one of them was, so getting into back to the horse. So $5,000 to buy a horse, couple $1,000, $1,000 maybe to store it and feed it.
Well, no, it's
Is there any other
in
costs
this
in there?
area? The total cost is $500 a month, so it's not at $800 to $1,000 in this area. Back east, where hay's harder to get than it is around those numbers, but here in Utah, it's about half that. So $500 total. You can board at another facility. If you have your own place to keep it, then your cost of feed is $300. So
$500 includes the feed?
$500 includes the feed. So
Wow. Uh-oh, I might be buying a horse.
yeah, right?
Yeah. My oldest boy is obsessed. I'd have to get a horse trailer, which that's another $4 or $5 grand probably.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You can buy a simple little two-horse trailer for $1,500.
Okay.
A good used trailer.
And then the saddles. Saddles are.
What's interesting is a really nice saddle is about $3 grand.
Wow.
$3,000 to $4,000.
So that's that. Why is that? What is the difference?
Just the market today. And,
they're handmade. I know my dad's been buying some.
You can buy a cheaper, they call it Mexican leather. It's just a lower grade of leather, and they're hard and brittle and not real comfortable to ride. You can buy
Chap
one
the
of
inner
those
side
for
of your thighs
$600-700. Yeah.
Okay. Just like
So
anything
it's well
in life.
worth getting a nice, comfortable saddle because they will last a lifetime if you take good care of them.
So you're $3 grand for that. You got the bridles and stuff. Those were probably a couple $100. Nothing crazy.
$150 for a bridle.
So out the door, if somebody listening wanted to get into owning a horse and having a horse they could go ride on the weekends, you're maybe 10 grand.
10 grand
with the horse trailer.
Even a horse trailer, yeah.
That's you see these people buying these, including me, buying these razors and side by sides that are $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I actually thought a horse would be more money than that. I didn't think it would be, $5 grand. I was thinking 10, something like that. I know my dad had spent 16, but that was 15, 20 years ago. But,
Yeah, those top performance horses like the rope horses, that's a good average for a good rope horse that's ready to go compete.
And that's trained to do what it needs to do on that.
Yeah.
As far as a horse just going out and riding, $5 grand. And then what? And yours would be quarter horses mostly.
Mostly,
what
yes.
you're selling.
Yeah.
What's your views on mules? Do you have you spent much time with mules? Do you know much about them? My dad was into horses, and now he's addicted to mules, which I know they have harder feet. Right? You don't have to shoe a mule.
Mules, well,
or do you?
not as often.
Okay.
Like they have the mules that go down in the canyon. They are hardier. They're stronger than horses. They're
A little more
agile.
sure-footed, right?
They're very sure-footed. They have smaller feet, but they're agile and tough. And
Which a
so-
mule, for people not listening, it's weird to me. A mule is a horse and a donkey
yes,
bred, and they're sterile.
yeah. The mule is a sire is the donkey out of a mare horse.
Sire is a male.
The male is the donkey,
Okay.
and the mare is the horse.
Okay.
So there's what you call a henny, which is the opposite. It's a stud horse crossed with
A female donkey.
Female donkey.
I've never heard of that, a henny.
And they say mules are by far better.
Huh. I've never, are they,
They say the baby.
I've never heard in my life a henny. That's wild. You always hear
Yeah.
mules.
Yeah, and they're not as near as common.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the mule is, that's all interesting. I didn't realize there was a difference between who was the father and who was the mother.
Yeah.
And it's weird are hennies sterile?
Yes.
Isn't that a
Mules and
weird?
hennies are
Isn't that a
sterile.
weird thing that they're just all sterile? Like they just, that's a weird thing that happens to me.
Well, the way I look at it is, it's unnatural.
Right,
Like
obviously.
they don't just
Yeah, obviously.
cross on their own. So
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense to me.
It does make
because
sense. It's just a weird.
in that aspect.
Yeah, it's a
So-
weird. That's a weird thing to where it's like, hey, you guys do this, and you can't do it again because it's not supposed to happen.
Right, and like they're crossing horses and zebras and calling them zorses.
Oh, really? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Are you serious? Are you messing with me?
No.
I'm pretty gullible, Dale. Don't mess with me, man. I'm gonna go tell people that. Is that real? That's
Yeah.
real. Is it striped? Do they have stripes?
Yeah, they have stripes. Usually it's on their legs. It's very definite on their legs, and then the body kind
I'm gonna
of
have to Google that.
melts into solid color.
Oh, are they sterile?
Yes.
I was gonna say that's not natural either.
No.
So I guess the benefit of a mule is because they live the same. I mean, they're right. They
Like,
20,
yeah.
25
To me,
years.
if you're out packing, they're stronger. So
That's what he does a
mules-
lot of. Is he?
mules are used for that particular thing and going down into the canyon because they're. But in general, you have to go through a lot of mules to find a good one because they are more stubborn. And if you have some bad experience, they're harder to help them get over that. Where horses are way more forgiving
Okay.
and easier to train.
Stubborn as a mule, right? That's the
Yeah,
saying.
that's exactly it.
Yeah, and I've been on. He's got one called Molly, and another one called. I'm not gonna remember the other one's name, but the other one is feisty. She's just a mean girl, and my dad won't have the kids ride her. He rides her, and will pack with her, but she's just kind of got an attitude. And like you said, he really can't break it. She's just high strung.
So there's 3 types of horses. There's the hot-blooded, the Arabians, the thoroughbreds, Pasafinos. They're what they consider hot-blooded. They're nervous, high energy. Then there's the warm bloods, like the quarter horse and the Morgan and some of these others. And then there's the cold bloods, the draft horses, the big draft
Clydesdale.
horses. And so what they found is to get a good mule, usually they're out of a cold-blooded horse. And so they're bigger, and like I say,
A little more relaxed,
Yeah.
a little more calm.
they're easier to train because of the cold-blood nature of the horse that they come from.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Man. See, that's the thing. That's what I love about these podcasts, and that's why, I'm doing this instead of construction, because I love having these conversations. You don't realize, there's so many. I actually have a few friends who are saying who talk to me a lot, and they're like, "Man, you have a lot of hobbies. You do a lot of things," and I'm like, well, you should try this. You should try, you know, hunting, or you should try golf. And they're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. You know, and I'm like, well, you got to find your thing. But once you find your thing, you know, I have buddies. I'm not into mountain biking. We're going to do it with M42 Adventures. I'm going to try it because I haven't really done a lot of it. But, you know, you could jump into the horse world and spend 30 years and probably just touch the surface of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you probably learn something new every day, every week. There's probably just something new that comes along that just...
That's absolutely what is so intriguing, is there's always something to learn.
Yeah, especially, you know, when you're working with these animals that have different personalities. I'm sure, you know, I know my dad, they had a horse named... I'm so bad with the names. What was her name? But when she died, they cried. You know, my dad's a cowboy like you know, I don't see him cry much. And he cried when that horse died. You know, they had such a bond. And, you know, that's what I think people don't realize is, you know, when you can find what calls you, you know, whether it's, you know, horses or, you know, dirt bikes or whatever it is. I mean, it changes you, you know, and like you said, there's people that I've interviewed that, you know, their connection to the earth is on a mountain bike. Their connection to the earth is surfing a wave, and it's all beautiful. It's all beautiful, you know? So I think did you have anything else to add, Dell, as far as what you'd want people to kind of, you know, learn or anything that you would, any advice you'd give out there?
Well, the only thing I can really think of that has meant so much to me and what I've seen is when you have an animal that you can take care of, because today, I mean, I grew up in a large family, but today most families are very small. But I've found when children have the responsibility to connect and take care of an animal, that's what keeps us grounded to the earth or the universe, for that matter. So the responsibility of taking care of an animal, to me, is quite crucial for children to have a solid, grounded life, because it teaches them how to develop relationships. It teaches them responsibility, which obviously gives us some self-worth. And
that's I 100% agree. You know, we've been traveling with my kids, like I told you, for 7 years. We got home and bought a dog. And I always had a dog growing up. You know, my parents always had a dog. We wasn't able to because we've been long-term traveling for years. And I came home and says to my wife, we're going to get a dog. And she's not a dog person. She's like, I don't want a dog. And I says, they need it. It's not about us.
Yeah.
These boys need to understand what it's like to have to feed something. You know, and they feed her every day. They water her every day. They bathe her once a week. You know, she's still a puppy, but I 100%, 1000% agree that, you know, I have a lot of friends who get, you know, not a lot, but there's the occasional friend who will get depressed or sad. And when I'm talking to them, I'm like, you need to think of something other than yourself.
Yep.
You know, and I think if you sit in a dark room or in the basement or whatever, you know, wherever you're at, and you're thinking about how bad your life is, you could spiral down. Life's hard. You know, shit happens. You know, we all go through stuff that's tough and difficult. And, but when you sit there and you dwell on it, it can get real dark. But if you have to get up and go out there and feed a horse, you know, every morning and every night, and, you know, brush it and hopefully hop on it or walk it around the yard, your mind's going to be able to get away from that for a minute. And that's why I think, like you said, all these youth homes and you know, what's the rehabilitation centers are using horses and animals, not even just horses. A lot of them have other animals.
Yeah.
To try to get these kids and even adults to think of something bigger than themselves. And I think you're 100% right. And that's where I'm thinking with my sons, you know, I think the next step for us is to get a horse, you know, and it's funny, you know, it's a weird thing, but I would rather them have a horse than a dirt bike, you know, and for that fact of dirt bike sits in the garage, they got to change its oil and stuff, but it's not a daily responsibility. It's not a daily responsibility, and it's not going to love them back, you know. And I think that there's, I have a lot of friends who family have animals and horses, and I think the kids are healthier. I really do. I think that they're, our kids are so much on screens and in a house, and not, Ricky was actually, we're going to do a podcast on this about just statistics, because at our events, we're going to shoot guns, we're going to ride horses, we're going to shoot bows. And it's like, what was the statistic, Ricky? You're spending just 15 minutes outside a week increases your happiness, and you're 35% more mentally stable if you spend 15 to 60 minutes outside, just in the sunlight. I mean, just that 35% happier if you're just outside. Now throw a horse into the equation, and what does that add? Being on the back of a horse in the sunshine, it's literal therapy. And I think that it would do a lot of people good to come experience this. And so I encourage people to look you up. Do you have a website, Dale?
Yeah.
So Simplified Horsemanship, what's the website?
Well,
or how do people reach you?
Blue Sage Adventures.
BlueSageAdventures.com.
Yeah.
And then they can get in touch with you either direction. If they want to go on some rides, if they want to, and if they want to work with their horses or get involved, or if they want to buy a horse. Mm-hmm. Right. So all things horses. You're in Southern Utah. I'm sure you can ship a horse, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they don't have to be in Southern Utah to buy a horse in Southern Utah. Is that true?
Correct. Yeah. There's horse transports all over. So
if they're in Texas, if they're in Florida, we can figure out how to get a horse to them out there. So there's a lot of opportunity if you want to look into this. Obviously, you can hear. I mean, I know some of the dollar amounts we discussed might be a lot for some people, but it seems manageable to me. People go out and spend $50,000 on a new car. And that's
just a 4-wheeler now is 10, 12 grand. That's just a bike.
It's crazy.
4-wheel bike. You can buy a horse, saddle, all your stuff, horse trailer.
Yeah, for 10 grand. Yeah. And then, I mean, the joy of that thing is and then I'm guessing, I know around here, there's lots of places to ride. I know like in San Diego, I was down in San Diego, down in town, and there was a horse park or something, an area where you could actually bring your horses and ride in I don't know if it's the city limits, but close to city. So I don't think this has to be, you hear a lot of people say, I can't get into, firearms. I'm in California. I can't get into archery. I'm in California. It's like, no, there's bow ranges. There's gun ranges. There's places to ride your horse. That's an excuse. You can overcome it.
Yeah.
And so, I appreciate you, Dell. Like I said, I'm excited for what we're going to do this fall. We're just at the beginning. Obviously, you've been doing this for 30 years. I'm hoping this can progress into. We haven't even talked about this, but what I would like to do, I think you'd be open to it, but I'd like to do next year where we go on multiple day rides. Do you ever do anything like that where you can
We haven't business wise, yeah.
Okay, but you'd be open to maybe something like that.
Absolutely do that. Yeah.
I would, I'm going to sign up, me and my boys, for sure, if you're willing to do that. Let's try to put some dates together for next year for M42, but I'm going to be the first customer. I just think of showing up, because how many horses do you have? You said you had like 13.
Yeah, we have 13 good trail horses right now.
I mean, that's unbelievable. So that's kind of what I would like to do, is bring out a group of, people and saddle up and head off into the hills for a few nights,
okay.
And actually do overnighters. I think that would be I think that would be the epic adventure, And so we'll put something like that together if you're willing. That's what I would like to do. And, I'm excited. I'm excited about the future. I appreciate you coming in here today. I know it's an hour drive each way to come into town, and I appreciate your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add that you can think of, you want people to hear?
I think we're good.
Good. We covered it all.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you, Dell. I'll put your contact information on our website, and thanks for listening. Appreciate it, Dell.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And there you have it. That was my conversation with Dell Timpson with Blue Sage Adventures. You can go to bluesageadventures.com and reach out to him for either tours, or if you want to have him work with your horse or with you, with your horse, Simplified Horsemanship. Beautiful conversation. I learned a ton. I hope you did too. I'm actually thinking I'm going to go buy a horse. I got to talk to the wife, obviously, but made it more less scary, So that's why we're having these conversations. That's why we're talking to these people who are specialists in their fields. We're going to do some amazing things with Dell coming up in the future. You heard us talk about the overnighters. That's going to be next year if you want to come out, get on a horse, and spend 3 or 4 days up in the mountains of southern Utah and all things horses. I mean, every aspect we're going to, that's going to be just an absolute amazing, amazing experience. So if you're not comfortable with that, come out to the events this fall and get your feet wet and spend, a day with a horse and see if you like it, see if you enjoy it. And then you can always sign up for the events experiences next year. So great conversation with Dell, lots of valuable information in there. And I'm really grateful that he made the trip over here to talk about that. We talked after he left, and we're excited for the future. So thanks, Dell, for coming in. Again, you can reach out to him at bluesageadventures.com, or you can go to us, our website at m42adventures.com. Reach out to us. We can put you in touch with him, or you can come to our events. He will be at those with horses, and he's an absolute amazing teacher. So look forward to seeing you down the road. Please like, share, listen to our podcast, follow us on social media, YouTube. If you want to see the videos of all of us, you can go there. So thanks for tuning in. We'll have another episode for you next week. Take care.